Caldwell, Idaho was a testament to the quietude that Middle America had to offer. Fields of wheat undulated like a golden sea, kissed by sunlight and tickled by the breath of the breeze. At the heart of this pastoral panorama, like an obelisk of yesteryears, stood the office of Maxwell Harrow, the detective bearing the weight of his own history. Inside, Harrow was an island amidst a sea of sepia-toned paperwork, half-eaten meals, and a towering tsunami of unresolved cases. The fading wallpaper, the creaking floorboards, the musty aroma of old leather and older coffee, all imbued his domain with an air of timelessness. Here the world seemed to breathe slower, the tick-tock of the antiquated clock on the wall a heartbeat in the silence. His gaze traced the ragged scars that adorned his knuckles, each a fossil of a long-forgotten scuffle, and he felt an uncanny kinship with the town he served. Both seemingly placid, their turmoil lying just beneath the surface. Memories of the earthquake resurfaced unbidden, those quivering moments of terror etched indelibly into his psyche. His contemplation was broken by the sharp ring of the telephone. It was the sheriff, his voice as gravelly as ever. "Max, we got a case. It's the Carringtons. Something about their family crypt." A frisson of anticipation coursed through him. The Carrington Crypt was a centuries-old enigma, looming on the outskirts of town, its darkened visage a blight upon the sunlit Idaho landscape. He had often watched it from his window, the crypt sitting silently, keeping its secrets well guarded within its stony embrace. His heart pounded a staccato rhythm as he rifled through the preliminary files, his eyes absorbing the scant details of alleged smuggling activity centered around the crypt. Items of an exotic nature, so the reports claimed, were being funneled to the mausoleum, their origin and purpose a mystery. Despite the chaos of his thoughts, he maintained his calm demeanor as he turned to his assistant, an eager young woman with a sharp mind and sharper intuition. "Mary, grab your coat. We're heading to the Carringtons." As they navigated the familiar streets of Caldwell, he could sense an uncanny shift. The town seemed to hold its breath, the atmosphere dense with veiled secrets and unspoken truths. The smiling faces of the locals were just a little too forced, their laughter a fraction too strident. As the crypt came into view, a shadow seemed to pass over the sun, casting the town into a fleeting twilight. The echoes of Mary's apprehensive gasp still hung in the air as he steeled himself for what lay ahead. With a deep breath that did little to quell the stirrings of unease, he stepped out of the car, his gaze fixed on the foreboding crypt. "Shadows and dust," he murmured, his voice barely audible, his mind already spiraling into the enigma of the Carrington Crypt. As the car's tires crunched on the gravel path, the Carrington Crypt emerged from the veil of silence, an imposing structure of forgotten eras. Its stoic facade was etched with age and weather, its presence an unyielding specter in the pastoral landscape. Each gravestone standing sentinel seemed a melancholic melody, frozen in time, a song of death and honor. The crypt itself was a discordant note, its grandeur belying a somber motif. Maxwell stepped out of the car, Mary following closely behind. A pervasive quietude hung over the place like a pall. The air seemed to hum with a rhythm older than time itself. His gaze traced the ornate architecture, the shadows cast by the midday sun weaving tantalizing patterns on the stone facade. Inside the crypt, the world seemed to fold into itself, the laws of space and time bending under the weight of the structure's historical gravity. Corridors snaked into the dimly lit distance, a mosaic of names and dates adorning each wall, each a silent testament to the Carrington lineage. His heart resonated with a strange rhythm as he delved deeper into the crypt, each footstep echoing through the hallowed halls. Mary, her eyes wide and bright, held up a lamp whose light seemed to shrink in the vastness of the crypt. She spoke in hushed tones, her voice only barely cutting through the oppressive silence. "What are we looking for, Max?" she asked, her voice echoing into the eerie silence. "I wish I knew, Mary," he admitted, his voice whispering back against the walls. They navigated the crypt's labyrinth, the musty scent of decayed parchment and timeless stone mixing with the air. Hidden corners revealed strange artifacts, outlandish in their construction, evoking an aura of otherworldliness. Unfamiliar symbols etched into the walls seemed to writhe under their flashlight's scrutiny, revealing an occult narrative. He picked up an artifact, its surface cool to the touch. He turned it in his hands, his fingers tracing the unfamiliar engravings. A chill coursed down his spine, an icy realization that this was no ordinary smuggling ring. His mind raced, the crypt's darkness pressing in on him, each shadow pregnant with untold horrors. The town's cheerful visage seemed a distant memory, replaced by a chilling mosaic of unseen terrors and unspeakable truths. A shiver of realization shook him from his thoughts, a dread-filled epiphany dawning upon his tired mind. This crypt, this sacred familial monument, was the beating heart of Caldwell's underbelly, pumping a dark ichor through the town's veins. He pocketed the artifact, the cold dread of his newfound knowledge chilling him to the bone. He had only begun to scratch the surface of the crypt's enigma, and a foreboding sense of doom filled him as he imagined the dark corners that lay unexplored. He felt Mary's hand on his shoulder, her warmth a stark contrast to the crypt's chilly embrace. Her voice, though shaky, carried a determined note. "We're in this together, Max." They returned to the world above, the bright sunlight almost blinding after the crypt's somber shadows. The world of Caldwell no longer seemed the same. Underneath the town's quaint charm, in the heart of its oldest crypt, lay an underbelly as dark as the relics it housed. Their journey into the labyrinthine depths was over, but they had only just begun to unravel the layers of its secrets. The Carrington Crypt loomed in their rearview mirror, its silent facade a stark reminder of the enigma that they had plunged headlong into. The post-crypt days carried an odd weight. In every glance, every casual interaction with the Caldwell populace, Maxwell saw the invisible threads of influence that the Carrington Crypt wielded over them. The once charming smiles of the townsfolk seemed to warp into twisted grimaces, their words now coated with an unsettling honeyed venom. He started noticing the arcane symbols, like those found in the crypt, cropping up around the town. They were subtly etched into doorframes, whispered in the patterns of laundry lines, secreted in the cracks of the town square's cobbled paths. The town, much like the crypt, was becoming an open book of unsettling tales. His visits to the sheriff's office grew more frequent. His once jovial exchanges with the sheriff were replaced by hushed discussions about the evolving situation, their conversations punctuated by the shared knowledge of Caldwell's clandestine horrors. Meanwhile, the crypt's artifact, a malignant reminder of his expedition, sat heavily in his pocket. He began researching, poring over old town records, books of folklore and occult manuscripts. He felt like a man trying to decipher a language that not only was alien, but also had the power to fray the edges of his sanity. Mary, ever his supportive confidant, became a pillar in these trying times. They worked in sync, their conversations late into the night, becoming a battle against the encroaching madness. The cozy confines of the office seemed their only sanctuary, a bastion against the growing malevolence outside. One evening, their investigations bore fruit. The symbols, the artifact, the whispers around town, all pointed to a sinister revelation. A cult, an unholy congregation, feeding off the cosmic entity the Carringtons had unknowingly ushered into Caldwell. He felt the world around him shift, his perceived reality ripping at the seams. He was plunged into an abyss of understanding, the fabric of his beliefs torn asunder. The town that he'd pledged to protect was not under his jurisdiction anymore. It had been claimed by forces far beyond his comprehension. The ground beneath him seemed to tremble, an echo of his past earthquake trauma mingling with his present dread. He clenched his fists, his knuckles white, as he stood at the precipice of this metaphysical maelstrom. With a solemn determination, he turned to Mary, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're dealing with something much more than a smuggling ring. This is a different beast altogether." Mary simply nodded, her eyes reflecting the cold, dread-laden truth. Yet within them, he also saw a spark, a tiny flame of resolve that reflected his own. As they stepped into the neon-lit night of Caldwell, the familiar sights seemed to warp around them, their innocence tainted by the dread that had been unveiled. Their task was monumental, their enemy unimaginable. Yet they had each other in a resolution that remained unshaken in the face of the unearthed horrors. Behind them, the office stood, a beacon amidst the dark, while ahead lay the town, a labyrinth of shadows that they were bound to tread. As the weight of their discovery sank in, the chilling call of the Carrington Crypt echoed in the distance, a haunting reminder of the maddening journey they had embarked on. Caldwell had become an alien landscape under the cult's stranglehold, a surrealist canvas of undulating nightmares. The once thriving town was now a hollow simulacrum, the chirpy laughter of children replaced by oppressive silence, the bright hues of the day dulled by an otherworldly twilight. Maxwell and Mary, once welcomed faces, were now strangers in their own home, their presence a ripple in the somber stillness. The whispered exchanges, the sidelong glances, the almost imperceptible recoil of townsfolk at their approach, all bespoke a tacit understanding. They were now outsiders. The truth of the Carrington Crypt had seeped into every pore of Caldwell, its malevolent influence tainting the very essence of the town. The crypt was no longer a structure on the periphery, but the pulsating heart of the town, its malignant rhythm beating in sync with the townsfolk's collective mind. As the horrifying reality of the cult's influence fully revealed itself, the need for escape became paramount. But the town had become an inescapable vortex, its borders a distant illusion. The roads twisted and turned, leading them in endless circles, always back to the center, the crypt. Desperate and nearly succumbing to the insidious dread, they planned their final attempt. Armed with the cryptic knowledge gleaned from the artifact and their own unwavering resolve, they made their way towards the crypt, their steps heavy with finality. Inside the crypt, the air buzzed with an unseen energy, the walls pulsating with an otherworldly life. The once familiar halls were now an alien labyrinth, the age-old inscriptions seeming to shift and morph, teasing their sanity. Suddenly the crypt shuddered, the ground shaking beneath their feet. Maxwell's heart pounded in his chest, the terror of his past trauma magnified by the present horror. But amid the shaking, he saw it, the symbols on the wall aligning, a hidden door revealing itself. Gritting his teeth against the deafening noise and the assaulting fear, he pushed through, Mary following close. The door closed behind them, muffling the chaos. The room they entered was bathed in an ethereal glow. At its center lay a portal, an undulating liquid mirror. As they stepped into the portal, they felt an immense pull, as if every atom of their being was being torn asunder, stretched across an incomprehensible void. And then, as sudden as it began, it stopped. They found themselves outside Caldwell, the sunlit wheat fields, a stark contrast to the dark labyrinth they had left behind. The town they had vowed to protect was now a distant shadow, an eerie silhouette against the setting sun. They had escaped, yet they carried it with them, the haunting memory of the crypt forever etched into their being. Their realities were forever unraveled, their worldviews irrevocably altered. As they drove away, the quietness of their escape was a jarring contrast to the maddening chaos they had left behind. They were changed, their identities as much a casualty of the crypt as the town itself. The line between the detective and the cosmic horror had blurred, leaving them standing on the precipice of their own sanity. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel, where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.